The Battle Over Sunlight, a suburban conspiracy unraveled. It began with a pastel pink envelope, duct taped to my solar inverter box like a ransom note left in broad daylight. Not in the mailbox, not slipped under the door, but taped with aggressive precision under the blazing Arizona sun. I peeled it off, the paper crinkling in my hands, revealing the crimson letterhead of the Crestview Meadows Homeowners Association, or as they called it, the Aesthetic Preservation Council. The name alone reeked of small-town despotism. Inside, the letter accused me of unauthorized solar modifications that violated Section 8, Clause 4.2 of the HOA covenant. According to Margaret Wheeler, the self-proclaimed enforcer of the council, my solar panels part of the home I'd purchased 3 weeks ago required prior written approval to avoid visual discord. The fine print threatened a $150 penalty if I didn't comply within 48 hours. This was my welcome to Crestview Meadows, a gated community in suburban Phoenix where every lawn was manicured to perfection and every mailbox screamed conformity. I'd moved here for peace, a quiet place to work remotely as the director of Arizona's Renewable Energy Policy Division. The house came with a fully permitted solar system, installed years ago by the previous owner. It wasn't new, illegal, or even remotely flashy, just a practical setup that cut my electric bill and powered my home office. But Margaret didn't care about facts. She cared about control. The next morning, my doorbell chimed at 7:15 a.m. There she stood, clipboard in hand, her smile as sharp as a tax collector's pen. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," she chirped, her voice dripping with false warmth. "I'm following up on your noncompliance issue." She didn't wait for a response, already scribbling something on her clipboard, probably noting the exact shade of my front door. I explained that the panels were grandfathered into the property, fully legal under state law, but she cut me off. "We'll need photographic proof, notarized by the county," she said, her tone implying I'd committed a crime against suburban decency. I chuckled, which seemed to ignite her like a match to dry grass. "This isn't a laughing matter," she snapped. "Crestview Meadows has standards." That evening, another envelope slid under my door, a $200 fine for non-responsiveness, dated less than 24 hours after our chat. By the end of the week, Margaret called a surprise HOA inspection. She arrived with 2 silent board members and a man named Hank, who carried a measuring tape and spoke only in dimensions. "Those panels are 3/8 of an inch beyond the authorized roofline," Margaret declared, her voice ringing with the authority of a courtroom judge. When I asked for the rules documentation, she waved her clipboard vaguely and muttered about aesthetic clutter. It was clear this wasn't an HOA, it was Margaret's fiefdom. Her driveway boasted solar-powered garden lights, which she dismissed as approved by a prior lighting committee. Entirely different context. Hank rolled his eyes, a rare crack in the facade. I dug into the HOA's online portal and found her name on every meeting minute, every vote, every motion passed unanimously, even when attendance was suspiciously low. Margaret wasn't just running the show, she was the show. I decided to fight back with a formal letter citing Arizona's solar access law, which protects homeowners' rights to renewable energy. The response came swiftly, a blurry PDF of a supposed Crestview solar courtesy code, and signed, undated, and typed in Comic Sans. Margaret claimed my appeal was denied due to its confrontational tone. Confrontational? I'd quoted statutes. The absurdity escalated when I caught a stranger on my roof, a drone photographer hired by Margaret to assess panel aesthetics from multiple angles. No permit, no notice. She called it community oversight. I called the police. Standing in my yard, sipping from a mug labeled HOA Empress, Margaret shrugged off my complaint. "If you have nothing to hide, why be upset?" she said. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about solar panels. It was about power. She was marking her territory, and I was the new guy who dared to challenge her. Little did she know, I wasn't just another homeowner. My day job involved writing the very energy codes she was trying to undermine. Margaret had picked a fight with the wrong neighbor, and I was just warming up. The breaking point came when she called an urgent special session of the HOA board to vote on my solar noncompliance. The email blast included a blurry photo of my house with a red X scrawled over the roof. I arrived at the community clubhouse to find Margaret seated under a banner reading, "Preserve Crestview's charm. flanked by her loyalist retirees and guilt-tripped spouses. She'd prepared a 12-slide PowerPoint titled Visual Pollution, a Community Crisis. Slide 1 showed my home circled in red like a crime scene. Slide 2 quoted, "One ugly roof drags us all down." Slide 3 featured a graph claiming neighborhood morale had plummeted since my arrival, with no data source. Margaret, in a navy blazer with a badge reading Aesthetic Enforcement Chief, narrated with theatrical flair. "This isn't personal," she lied, "but it's about harmony." Her video montage contrasted pristine homes with my panels, set to horror movie violins. The room was a mix of confusion and boredom. One woman whispered, "I thought this was a potluck." When I took the floor, I cited state law, but Margaret snapped, "This isn't a courtroom." I smiled. "It might be soon." The room fell silent when I pulled out my phone and dialed my boss, Deputy Director Elaine Carter, on speaker. "Hi, Margaret," Elaine said calmly. "You're violating Arizona Revised Statutes 33 to 439. Rescind this nonsense by the end of the day, or expect a cease and desist and a civil suit." Margaret froze, her face like she'd bitten into a lemon. Someone gasped. Someone clapped. She ended the meeting, citing emotional exhaustion, and slunk out. As I left, a couple handed me a plate of brownies. "We've hated her since she fined us for beige gravel," the wife whispered. "Take her down." That night, an anonymous envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a photocopied HOA ledger and a sticky note, "Follow the money. She's billing us for drones." Margaret's reign was crumbling, and someone in her inner circle was ready to betray her. This wasn't just about Solar Anna Maria, it was about corruption. The anonymous envelope in my mailbox was like a grenade with the pin half pulled. The photocopied HOA ledger inside revealed a line item buried under Community Enhancement Fees, $795.16 monthly for Neighborhood Surveillance Solutions. The sticky note, scrawled in hurried ink, read, "Follow the money. She's billing us for drones." My pulse quickened. Margaret Wheeler wasn't just a petty tyrant, she was running a scam under Crestview Meadows' nose. I sat at my kitchen table, the solar panels outside humming softly, and cross-referenced the ledger's receipt codes with Arizona's public vendor database. The payments led to a company called MetaWatch Security, a supposed LLC with no website, no reviews, and a registered address matching a P.O. box in downtown Phoenix. Digging deeper, I found the LLC's contact, M. Wheeler. Margaret. She was funneling HOA dues to herself, disguising them as security expenses. I laughed out loud, startling my cat. She was billing her neighbors to spy on them. I compiled the evidence into a PDF titled Crestview HOA Financial Irregularities, Audit Request, and emailed it to the Arizona Department of Real Estate, copying every resident on the HOA mailing list. By morning, my inbox was flooded. "She charged us for what?" one neighbor wrote. Another sent screenshots of Margaret's old newsletters, boasting about fiscal responsibility. The irony was thicker than Phoenix summer heat. Margaret, true to form, denied everything. She called an emergency transparency meeting at the Community Parks Amphitheater, standing behind a podium draped with a banner reading, "Trust in Crestview." Her voice wavered as she claimed the surveillance funds were for holiday safety and wildlife deterrence. When someone asked, "What wildlife?" she stammered, "Coyotes and solar glare hazards." It hadn't rained in weeks, yet she blamed a server crash for missing receipts. The crowd wasn't buying it. Retirees clutched notepads, young parents pushed strollers, and even old Mr. Jenkins, who only left his house for the 4th of July parade, muttered, "She fined me for red, white, and blue bunting." A former HOA treasurer, Clara Benson, stood up and dropped a bombshell. "I was pushed off the board when I questioned payments Margaret made to her own P.O. box," she said. She called it emergency storage for HOA files. The crowd gasped. Clara revealed Margaret stored documents next to her side hustle's aromatherapy license. Whispers turned to shouts. Someone flashed Venmo screenshots of Margaret requesting community beautification funds, including one labeled patio candles and another for HOA morale wine. Margaret tried to adjourn the meeting, citing hostility, but no one budged. Then a man in a plain suit stood. "I'm with the Arizona Office of Community Oversight," he said, flashing a badge. "We're auditing your books starting tomorrow." Margaret's jaw dropped, her composure cracking like cheap stucco. "You can't just," she began, but he cut her off. "We can," and we did. The crowd erupted in cheers. As I walked out, a landscaper slipped me a USB drive. "You didn't get this from me," he whispered, "but it's footage of Margaret using HOA funds for a private board appreciation brunch. She was the only guest." The video showed her toasting herself with champagne under a banner reading, "Margaret saves Crestview again." I uploaded it to the neighborhood Facebook group with the caption, "Our dues at work." It got 189 shares in an hour. Margaret doubled down. 3 days later, a manila envelope was taped to my solar junction box. Inside was a cease and desist order from the Arizona Department of Energy Standards and Zoning. It had an embossed seal, a watermark, and a signature, Margaret W. Wheeler, Compliance Coordinator. Provisional. The letterhead was in Arial font. Government documents never use Arial and the department didn't exist. I laughed so hard my neighbor checked on me. Margaret had forged a state order, threatening to cut my power if I didn't deactivate solar functions within 48 hours. Her instructions? Flip the inverter breaker and cover sunlight-absorbing surfaces with a non-reflective cloth. A towel over solar panels. It was beyond parody. I scanned the document and ran it through the state's verification system. Fake, as expected. Instead of confronting her, I played along. The next day, another letter arrived, this time in Courier New, demanding immediate compliance or state-level prosecution. She'd misspelled prosecution as prosecution. I forwarded everything to the real Arizona Department of Energy, which flagged Margaret for impersonating a state entity. But I held off telling her. I had a better plan. I printed the Arizona Solar Rights Act, highlighted the relevant sections, and taped it to her door with a note. "Your forged letter cited the wrong statute. Careful, Margaret." The next morning, an email from crestviewcompliance@gmail.com landed in my inbox, subject line, "Remove panels or face prosecution." It was riddled with typos and threats about federal aviation hazards from my panel's glare. I replied with a screenshot of the federal penalty for falsifying government documents, up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. She went silent. Then a neighbor, Tom, forwarded a next-door post from Margaret. She claimed my panels could blind pilots and violate FAA guidelines. Someone commented, "We're 20 miles from the airport." Another posted a photo of Margaret on her roof with binoculars and a walkie-talkie, captioned, "Crestview Air Traffic Control." The HOA page exploded with memes. Margaret as a bottle of correction fluid, labeled "For all your forgery needs." But the real twist came from a woman named Ellen, who messaged me anonymously. She'd worked with Margaret at a county zoning office years ago and had proof of prior misconduct. Ellen sent me a letterhead from Margaret's old alias, Marge Wilson, Community Standards Executive, used to issue fake citations. It matched my forged shutdown notice. I sent the dossier to the state auditor's legal team, who looped in law enforcement. A week later, sheriff's deputies questioned Margaret on her lawn, her HOA blazer and pearls no match for their stern faces. She claimed it was a clerical mix-up and her templates got confused. The deputy wasn't impressed. "Ma'am," he said, "you're under investigation for impersonating a state official and issuing false threats." I'd lawyer up. Neighbors watched, sipping coffee, as her empire crumbled. The HOA called an emergency meeting to address trust erosion. Margaret didn't show, but someone had draped a beach towel over her mailbox with "Solar Slayer" written in marker. Crestview Meadows was turning on its queen, and the next meeting promised to be her last. But Margaret wasn't done. A handwritten note appeared in my mailbox, and signed but unmistakable in her sharp, underlined script. "Unauthorized bird feeder. Remove or face consequences." She was back, and I was ready to snap her last lifeline. Margaret Wheeler's handwritten note about my unauthorized bird feeder was the desperate gasp of a drowning regime. Her removal from the Crestview Meadows HOA board should have been the end, but like a suburban warlord, she refused to surrender. Instead, she escalated, filing a small claims lawsuit against me for emotional distress caused by solar-related antagonism. The claim, titled Wheeler vs. Solar Offender, alleged my panel's glare had disrupted her sleep, stressed her pet cockatiel, feathers, and ruined her morning coffee ritual. She included a blurry photo of Feathers looking mildly annoyed and demanded $4,200 plus a court-ordered removal of my panels. My lawyer, a grizzled retiree named Ed, laughed until he coughed. A cockatiel sleep disorder in a legal filing, he wheezed. This is a first. The summons was real, though, set for a Tuesday at the Maricopa County Courthouse. I arrived in a blazer, prepared for absurdity. Margaret swept in wearing a maroon suit, a flag pin, and carrying a binder labeled Sunlight Sabotage, Exhibit A. She brought a PowerPoint presentation with animated transitions. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her late 60s named Judge Harlan, sighed at the sight of Margaret's slideshow remote. "Ms. Wheeler, are you a lawyer?" she asked. Margaret beamed. "I have extensive experience in community compliance enforcement." Translation: HOA dictator. Her 15-minute opening monologue rambled about photon misalignment and cited her own HOA pamphlets as legal precedent. When she mentioned Feathers' midday lethargy, Judge Harlan stopped her. "Is there a veterinarian's affidavit?" Margaret blinked. "I wrote one myself as a pet empath." The judge's pen hit the desk. "A pet empath?" "Yes," Margaret said, dead serious. "I channel animal emotions through eye contact." A snicker escaped the courtroom. Judge Harlan turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, your response?" I presented the Arizona Solar Rights Act, my compliance certificates, and emails proving Margaret's forged documents. Then I dropped the hammer. An affidavit from the Arizona Department of Energy confirming my panels were part of a state clean energy initiative. "Ms. Wheeler attempted to obstruct a state program over a bird's nap," I said. Judge Harlan scanned the affidavit, glanced at Margaret, and said, "So you sabotaged a state project over a cockatiel?" Margaret stammered. "It's more nuanced, I doubt it." The judge cut in. "Case dismissed. Ms. Wheeler, you're lucky Mr. Thompson didn't countersue for defamation or impersonation. And stop submitting homemade subpoenas. That's not how they work." The courtroom erupted in polite applause, mostly from Crestview residents who'd come for the spectacle. Outside, someone had chalked on the sidewalk, "Let there be light and justice." Margaret, in a final act of defiance, confronted me in the parking lot. "This isn't over," she shrieked, but her heel caught a crack, and she tumbled into a mulch pile, emerging covered in bark and rage. I filed for court cost reimbursement $142.50, approved. Her check bounced twice. I mailed her an invoice on recycled paper with a solar panel logo and the note, "A renewable lesson." But Margaret's forged letters had lit a fuse. Weeks later, the Arizona Department of Consumer Protection called. "We're filing charges," said Investigator Feldman, his voice a mix of boredom and glee. "She impersonated a government official, distributed fake compliance orders, and submitted them in court. That's 3 felonies and 2 misdemeanors, not counting the drone misuse." I nearly spilled my coffee. "Is this real?" He chuckled. "She even used her stationery." On a Saturday at 10:52 a.m., a sheriff's SUV parked in front of Margaret's house. Neighbors paused their gardening, leashed dogs in hand, to watch. Margaret answered in a robe embroidered with HOA Empress, her face paling at the deputy's badge. "You're under arrest for falsifying public documents, impersonating a regulatory officer, and misusing HOA funds," he read. "This is a mistake," she hissed. I was upholding decorum. The deputy's reply was dry. "Decorum doesn't involve fake cease and desists or spy drones." The handcuffs clicked, echoing across the cul-de-sac. Her robe snagged on a rose bush she'd once fined a neighbor $30 for overgrowth. Poetic justice. Residents filmed the arrest, and the video hit the Crestview Facebook group with the caption, "Empress dethroned. Curb appeal update." It racked up 700 likes. Someone edited it into a mock trailer, HOA, House of Handcuffs, set to dramatic music. The legal fallout was swift. A search warrant uncovered Margaret's home office, a shrine to her schemes. Stacks of forged violation notices, fake state letterheads, and a ledger of citations for offenses like overly festive wreaths or excessively cheerful parking. The assistant DA called it suburban authoritarianism with a glitter pen. The real kicker? Margaret had billed the HOA $5,100 for consulting sessions with her own fake company, Harmony Solutions Incorporated, run from her spare bedroom. Invoices listed $130 hourly for community equilibrium reviews. A civil suit for embezzlement followed, and the neighborhood group chat adopted a meme of a gavel smashing a tiara, captioned, Solar 1, Margaret 0. Local news ran a story. HOA tyrant arrested for fake energy orders, with interviews outside her house, where her neighborhood harmony zone sign had been torn down. Margaret was released on bail, disheveled and wearing sunglasses indoors. She taped a note to her door. All lies. Solar mob slandered me. Feathers traumatized. Rumor had it Feathers escaped when someone left his cage open. Smart bird. Her trial was set for 3 months later, but Crestview threw a block party, the Sunshine Bash, to celebrate her fall. We drank lemonade, smashed a piñata shaped like a cease and desist letter, and danced under solar-powered string lights. Margaret watched from her window, her blinds twitching, powerless. Her trial was a circus. The courthouse moved it to a larger room for the press and gawkers. Margaret arrived in a beige suit with a self-made pin reading Former Civic Champion, lugging 3 tote bags labeled Truth Files, Personal Harm Log, and Glare Victim Notes. Representing herself, she rambled about aesthetic anarchy and my panel's assault on community aura. The judge, Ms. Carver, cut her off. This isn't a TED Talk, Ms. Wheeler. Stick to the law. Margaret called herself as her first witness, narrating in third person. Margaret Wheeler, guardian of order, acted out of duty. The courtroom stifled laughter. Her attempt to submit a forged letter was halted when the prosecutor held up the real statute. This code doesn't exist, he said. It's a Taco Bell menu item. A juror snorted. The prosecution's slideshow compared her fake documents to real ones, wrong fonts, Google Images seals, a watermark reading sample template. The final slide showed Margaret flashing a homemade energy compliance badge on a Zoom call. Is that laminated paper? Judge Carver asked. Margaret mumbled. It's ceremonial. The prosecution called Clara, the ex-treasurer, who revealed Margaret's fake invoices and drone rentals under the alias Marge Wilson, Urban Monitor. She called herself Grid Enforcer, Clara said. I thought it was a joke. The courtroom roared. Margaret shouted. I protected order. Judge Carver's gavel slammed. Order is what you broke. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes, returning guilty verdicts on all counts. 3 years probation, 350 hours of community service, $8,000 in HOA restitution, and a mandatory psychological evaluation. Outside, reporters swarmed. Any regrets about posing as a state agent? One asked. Margaret stared into the camera. I should have gone federal. The clip went viral, remixed as Grid Enforcer Gone Federal, with 1.8 million views. Crestview held a trial and triumph party, serving legal lemonade and pinning crimes on a Margaret cutout. My new solar-powered mailbox, perfectly compliant, was unveiled to cheers. But Margaret wasn't done. A flyer appeared on my doorstep, red font, all caps. Take back Crestview. She was plotting a comeback, and I was ready to bury her for good. Margaret Wheeler's Take Back Crestview flyer was a desperate cry from a fallen tyrant, printed in red ink with margins as erratic as her logic. It announced the formation of the Citizens Alliance for Meadows Restoration, CMR, which she insisted was not an HOA, but a coalition of patriotic stewards. The manifesto ranted about solar elites infiltrating Crestview and warned of reflective chaos swallowing our skies. It was unhinged, yet chillingly familiar. Margaret was trying to rebuild her empire from the ashes. She hosted her first CMR meeting at the local library's community room. Only 4 people showed up. Her sister from Tucson, a confused retiree expecting a bridge club, Feathers the cockatiel, in a cage, and a stray dog someone let in. The library shut it down when Margaret handed out homemade ID badges titled Deputy of Residential Purity. Undeterred, she launched a Facebook group, Crestview Unchained, Reclaim Our Lawns, which gained 6 members. Half were her burner accounts. Her posts flagged infractions like overly vibrant tulips or suspiciously timed sprinkler cycles. Residents mocked her with memes, one editing her face onto a tinfoil hat with the caption, Solar Conspiracy HQ. Margaret's next move was a welcome kit, mailed to 15 homes in padded envelopes. It included a rubber stamp of her CMR logo, a sun with a slash through ETA, citizen citation pad, and a pamphlet, Spotting Solar Sabotage in Your Neighborhood. The banned items list was absurd. solar lanterns after 7 p.m., reflective birdhouses, and vibe-heavy decor. Neighbors posted photos online, one captioned, "My cat's new chew toy." The HOA issued a tongue-in-cheek statement. "We're aware of a rogue group monitoring solar vibrations. Please recycle their packets responsibly." Her rally for residential order was the low point. Held in a defunct hardware store's parking lot, Margaret stood on a podium of stacked Amazon boxes, megaphone in hand, live streaming to 3 viewers. "The tyranny of lithium must end," she shouted, ranting about shadow panels and photon overlords. A teenager on a skateboard zoomed by, yelling, "Get a life, Margaret." The clip went viral, remixed with techno beats. She filed paperwork to become a private neighborhood governance consultant, complete with business cards reading Certified HOA Reform Specialist. The state rejected it in hours, noting, "This role doesn't exist, nor should it." Still, Margaret went door to door in a sash labeled Community Freedom Advocate, offering $5 Starbucks gift cards to sign her petition against solar hegemony. No one signed. One neighbor gave a fake name, Ray Sunshine. The petition ended up in a park trash can, wrapped around a half-eaten burrito. At the HOA's Crestview Solar Fest, Margaret crashed with a box of flyers, setting up a booth near the lemonade stand. Clara Benson, now the HOA president, approached with 2 volunteers. "Margaret," she said calmly, "this isn't a flea market. You can't peddle photon tyranny here." Margaret shrieked, "This is public property." Clara smiled. "Not when you're yelling at a sun-shaped piñata." Security escorted her out as kids chanted, "Sun vampire, go home." A girl getting face paint asked, "Is she the light hater?" Her dad nodded. That night, a parody website, CRLOL.com, popped up with a Margaret offense generator quiz. How many fines would you get in her HOA? Answer: all of them. Margaret deleted her social accounts the next day. Her CMR collapsed, its logo stamped flyers littering recycle bins. But the real blow came quietly. A foreclosure notice, duct taped to her storm door. The group chat exploded. Bank taped Margaret's house. The photo showed her wilted lawn, a sagging security camera, and the notice fluttering like a white flag. Clara brought lawn chairs, Tom brought cookies, and we watched like it was a solar eclipse. The foreclosure stemmed from unpaid taxes on her fake LLC, Harmony Solutions Incorporated, which triggered an IRS audit. Margaret had claimed a religious exemption for her home office, arguing her Harmony facilitation was a spiritual mission. The IRS disagreed, fining her $14,000 and placing a lien on her property. She'd also dodged property tax penalties for years, never disclosing them to the HOA. In a Facebook post titled "A Glare Too Bright," she blamed solar greed and asked for a trailer with municipal autonomy. Someone replied, "Try Mars." It got 112 likes. During the cleanup, the repo team found a file cabinet labeled HOA Classified Ops. Handwritten notes detailed revenge plans. Plant skunk sent near Thompson's deck, blames solar heat, and swap his doormat with a fake summons. Clara turned it over to the authorities, tying it to Margaret's probation. Neighbors treated her house like a museum of chaos, pointing and whispering. This is what happens when you forge state seals. The listing went online, diplomatically worded, "Former HOA leader's home, full of character, minor oversight history. No takers." Then I had an idea. I called my realtor friend, made some inquiries, and bought the house through a trust at market price, signed on my solar-powered tablet. The neighborhood lost it. Solar guy owns Margaret's lair. I repainted it, landscaped the yard, and turned her compliance office into a hub for community solar grants. At the next HOA meeting, held in her former living room, Clara opened with, "From intimidation to inspiration." Cheers erupted. I kept Margaret's Harmony Zone sign in the garage as a relic. We unveiled a lawn sign, a sun in shades, reading, "Powered by reality and reason." Even feathers, now adopted by a teen neighbor, chirped approval from a windowsill. But Margaret wasn't gone. She became the drive-by enforcer, cruising Crestview in a dented SUV with a faded Civic Duty Live sticker. She'd park, scribble notes through tinted windows, and email anonymous threats from crestview@protonmail.com about solar favoritism and photon aggression. One read, You won the panels, but the shadows know. Gmail flagged them as spam. She mailed parchment paper warnings to the clubhouse, citing a non-existent HOA Integrity Bureau, Sector 7. Her podcast, Glow No More, Surviving the Solar Plot, lasted 3 episodes, one accusing the HOA of being a photovoltaic cartel, another interviewing feathers, and a third of her typing and ranting about wind chimes. She crossed a line when she sent a fake citation to a couple in a neighboring zip code for unsanctioned gazebo shimmer. They called the sheriff, thinking it was a scam. Another neighbor caught her measuring his shrubs with a yardstick and a GoPro, claiming a light bounce audit. He told her to leave. The county issued a cease and desist order for harassment and impersonation. Margaret ignored it, so they filed a protective order. At the hearing, she argued she was bound by a moral covenant with the land that trumped county law. The judge, unimpressed, said, "This is Phoenix, not a fantasy novel." The order banned her from Crestview and any HOA in Maricopa County for 5 years, flagging her as a repeat residential interference agent. Her license plate triggered alerts at county lines. Residents celebrated with a ban-iversary picnic, serving Margaret-free mojitos and playing cornhole near my now iconic panels. Clara awarded me a plaque shaped like a solar beam, engraved for bringing light. As the sun set, we toasted to photons, peace, and a tyrant-proof future. But Margaret's final act was brewing. A state bulletin named her a public nuisance, Tier 2 solar interference agent, barring her from all Arizona HOA activities. Then came the ultimate irony. Her probation included community service under a renewable energy program. Margaret was court-ordered to clean solar panels. For 3 weeks, she was bussed to state facilities, handed a squeegee, and tasked with scrubbing bird droppings off the very panels she'd demonized. A news article, "Tyrant Scrubs the Panels She Fought," showed her squinting at a solar array, defeated. She muttered about photon oppression, but mostly complained about ladders. The hashtag SolarKarma trended. Her service ended at a facility named fittingly Crestview EcoWorks. Back home, we held the Photon Farewell Fest, tossing beanbags at Margaret cutouts and playing her viral Grid Enforcer remix. Clara planted a citrus tree by the clubhouse, its plaque reading, "Let light grow despite the shade." Margaret's legacy was reduced to sunscreen and glass cleaner, but one final twist awaited, brighter than ever. Margaret Wheeler's court-ordered stint cleaning solar panels should have been her final humiliation, a poetic end to her reign as Crestview Meadows' self-styled HOA Empress. But just when we thought she'd faded into obscurity, peddling anti-glare umbrellas at a desert flea market, she launched a last, absurd bid for relevance. It began with a local news segment, "How One HOA Defeated Solar Opposition," featuring me discussing Crestview's transformation into a state-recognized energy hub. The piece showcased our upgraded panels, solar-lit trails, and a community garden with a sign reading, "Let It Shine." Margaret, likely watching from whatever RV she now called home, saw it as a personal affront. Days later, she filed a complaint against the news station, accusing them of glorifying illegal light pollution. Her 10-page manifesto, typed entirely in italics, claimed the segment manipulated photons for narrative bias and demanded a televised retraction to restore the light field's balance. The station's legal team dismissed it, but Margaret showed up at their studio during a live broadcast about a pet adoption fair. Mid-segment, she stormed into frame, waving a sign. "I fought the glare, and the glare won." Shouting, "I pioneered solar awareness," she shook her fist at a confused Labrador. The anchor stammered, the camera rolled, and the clip aired live. Social media exploded. Ex-users dubbed her Photon Margaret, with one post reading, "Local HOA fugitive claims solar panels stole her soul and her bird's joy." More at 10. TikTok remixed the footage with EDM beats, solar panels flashing laser eyes. A deepfake cast her as a sci-fi villain, declaring, "The real storm is your wattage." T-shirts popped up on Etsy. Photon Margaret's meltdown smells like delusion. She tried suing the station for broadcast radiation misuse, citing spiritual eye strain. The judge tossed it out, reportedly chuckling. Margaret doubled down on a fringe podcast, Truth Unplugged, claiming Crestview's HOA was a front for big solar, and that Feathers, her cockatiel, had developed telepathic distress signals. The episode, mostly her ranting over keyboard clacks, inspired fan art of feathers in a tinfoil hat. Crestview embraced the chaos with a laugh and light watch party, projecting the clip on a solar-powered screen. Clara Benson, our HOA president, wore sunglasses and toasted to the spectrum. It was cathartic, a community laughing at its former oppressor. But the real victory was unfolding quietly. Under Clara's leadership, my policy expertise, and neighbors' enthusiasm, Crestview Meadows became Arizona's model for sustainable living. We installed shared battery backups, launched eco-workshops, and created a rebate pool for green upgrades. Then came the letter that changed everything. The Arizona Energy Commission named us Outstanding Residential Energy Innovator, awarding a $20,000 grant, a keynote slot at the State Green Summit, and a plaque that felt like a middle finger to Margaret's legacy. At the summit, our booth, flanked by solar tech giants like SunPower, showcased Crestview's journey from tyranny to triumph. We wore green polos, handed out brochures, and looped a video of our garden and trails. Then we spotted her, Margaret, lurking near the parking lot with a table and a sign. The truth about solar. What panels hide. She waved flyers about photon trauma and panel agendas. Attendees ignored her. Some snapped selfies for laughs. Event staff ejected her within 45 minutes after she yelled about light colonization. The moment, set to ukulele on TikTok, went viral as Margaret's off-grid meltdown. On stage, I spoke not of her, but of resilience, how transparency toppled intimidation, how clean energy united us against petty rule. The applause was thunderous. A state official emailed later, asking me to consult on other HOA's renewable transitions. Margaret, predictably, claimed credit on her blog, Solar Justice Now, one follower, herself, insisting her confrontation sparked Crestview's movement. A neighbor screenshotted it with, "Margaret, please." She appeared at a farmer's market, peddling pamphlets about panels, signaling via heat patterns. A volunteer in a Team Solar shirt escorted her out. The grant funded a community orchard with solar irrigation, USB charging benches, and motion sensor trail lights. We mounted our state plaque in the clubhouse, beside a photo of Margaret's ejection, captioned, "Powered by Progress, Immune to Petty." Margaret mailed the state a final letter, claiming whistleblower status, with feathers molted feathers, as environmental evidence. They returned it with a note. "No, thanks." Just when her saga seemed buried, a moving van rolled into her old driveway new property. The truck's logo, Sunlit Movers, drew laughs. Out stepped the new tenants, a couple in their 30s, both solar engineers, with a 5-year-old daughter in a sunflower hat. "We work in grid integration," the dad, Mark, said, grinning. "This place is perfect for Crestview's energy vibe." He paused. The realtor mentioned the last owner had sun issues. Understatement of the decade. That evening, neighbors gathered, swapping Margaret's stories. Mark hammered in a yard sign. Matte black, white text, proudly powered by solar, approved by logic. We roared. Clara sat on the curb, gasping with laughter. Tom choked on his soda. The sign became a legend, posted to Reddit with 60,000 upvotes. Tyrant's house now a beacon of reason. Mark and his wife, Lena, leaned into the lore, baking sun-shaped cookies with energy facts iced on top. Their Wi-Fi? Photon liberation. Their mailbox? Solar lit, auto-notifying. Margaret would have imploded. The girl, Sophie, asked me while I weeded my garden, "Did the lady here hate sunlight?" I nodded. She had odd priorities. Sophie squinted at the sky. "That's silly. It's free." Her words hit like a revelation. In Margaret's former fortress, a new generation embraced the light without fear. The final twist came via a state consumer protection bulletin. Margaret's mugshot, stamped, permanently barred from HOA involvement, all Arizona districts, made history as a first-of-its-kind ban. Labeled a public nuisance, Tier 2 solar interference agent, she was a cautionary tale against civic betrayal. Her years of forgery and harassment had cost taxpayers, eroded trust, and earned her a title no one envied. Her probation's solar panel cleaning stint became legend. A coworker leaked that she'd grumbled about photon betrayal, but mostly fussed about squeegee handles. The image Margaret, visor on, wiping panels in defeat closed her chapter. Crestview held a final Photon Forever fest, stringing solar lanterns and smashing a Margaret piñata. I toasted by the garden, under the panels that started it all. To every fine she issued, every lie she forged, thank you, Margaret, for showing us who we're not. Cheers echoed. Feathers, now a teen's pet, squawked in harmony. We planted a lemon tree, its plaque reading, "Let light grow, despite the shade." Margaret's name vanished from HOA records. Last heard, she was hawking light-deflecting parasols at a swap meet, her SUV's bumper sticker reading, "HOA-free since 2025." Her punishment wasn't just exile, it was serving the light she despised, humbly, under the law she mocked. Crestview Meadows shone brighter, a community forged in sunlight, logic, and the fall of a tyrant. This wasn't just a win for solar, it was a triumph over small-scale tyranny, the kind that festers in clipboards and fake letterheads. Margaret's downfall reminds us, power unchecked breeds injustice, but truth, backed by community, burns brighter than any glare. What do you think, readers? Have you faced a Margaret in your life, a petty ruler wielding fines or fear? Share your stories in the comments, especially on how you've confronted tyranny or unfairness. Take a stand. Voice your violets, keep the light of justice shining.